Are U.S. consumers heading back to 2008? The impact of Trump's tariffs on the economy. A chilling warning sign. American consumers are starting to feel the pinch of Trump's tariffs. In a stark reminder of the devastating 2008 financial crisis, American consumers are flashing a warning signal that the economy is on shaky ground. As President Trump's sweeping tariffs on America's trading partners begin to take hold, the ripple effects are being felt far and wide. From shrinking paychecks to dwindling job prospects, everyday Americans are starting to bear the brunt of the economic squeeze. While overall U.S. consumer spending managed a modest uptick in the second quarter, a closer look reveals a more ominous picture. Spending on services, including airfare, hotels, and dining out, plummeted every month last quarter, according to the Bank of America Institute. This marks the first sustained decline since the dark days of the 2008 financial crisis. To put this into perspective, it's a stark reversal of the usual trend where service spending tends to be a stalwart of the American economy. Credit card spending also took a hit, recording its first quarterly drop in over a year. This is a clear indication that consumers are becoming increasingly cautious with their finances, a worrying sign for the economy as a whole. As Liz Everett-Crisberg, head of the Bank of America Institute, astutely observed, if you were to say, "What is the temperature of the consumer right now?" I would tell you that it's cooling, but it's not frozen. It's not collapsing. While this may seem like a reassuring assessment, it's essential to recognize that even a slight cooling of consumer spending can have far-reaching consequences for the economy. Moreover, the slowdown in service spending is closely tied to a growing weakness in the labor market. Americans are finding it increasingly challenging to secure jobs, with the latest non-farm payrolls report revealing a paltry 73,000 new hires in July. To make matters worse, the May and June figures were revised down by a staggering 258,000, sparking concerns about the accuracy of government data. As Spencer Hakimian, founder of Tolu Capital Management, wryly noted, "I'm sure it was just an honest mistake when they overestimated it by 1,400% 30 days ago." This scathing remark highlights the growing distrust in government data and the need. Americans slash spending as economic worries rise. Why this downturn feels different. Americans are feeling the pinch more than ever, but here's where it gets controversial. Are we truly heading into a prolonged economic slowdown, or is this just a temporary ripple caused by recent policies? The overall mood is shifting. Shoppers are tightening their belts, and the reasons behind this trend are more complex than simple headlines suggest. 6 months into President Donald Trump's second term, fresh data reveals a clear picture. Consumer spending is weakening across the board. From purchasing cheaper groceries to skipping vacations altogether, households are cutting back significantly, while inflation-adjusted spending saw a tiny increase of 0.1% in June, after a dip of 0.2% in May. The longer-term trend points to caution among consumers. The U.S. Commerce Department's recent report underscores this shift, illustrating that what was once a period of robust spending has started to slow down. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell highlighted this change in a recent press conference, noting that consumer spending, which had been remarkably vigorous over recent years, might finally be cooling. The phrase "finally" hints at a possible turning point, one that could have broad implications for all sectors of the economy. And the sparks for concern aren't just coming from consumer habits. President Trump's renewed tariffs, which went into effect on August 1st, target dozens of countries, raising fears among economists that the costs will trickle down into everyday prices. A recent Yale study estimates that these tariffs could add as much as $2,400 annually to the typical household's expenses by 2025, an ominous sign for many families already feeling squeezed. Adding fuel to the fire, July's jobs report disappointed expectations profoundly, sparking notable controversy within the administration. The U.S. economy grew by only 73,000 new jobs that month, and revisions for earlier months revealed a combined loss of 258,000 jobs, significantly fewer than what many hoped for or anticipated. Such data fuels the growing anxiety that the labor market may be losing momentum, despite previously steady growth. This economic unease isn't just speculation, it's felt on the ground. According to a June poll, a staggering 83% of Americans worry about rising grocery prices. Nearly half worry about their ability to cover rent or mortgage payments. Alarmingly, around 25% of respondents reported that someone in their household has already skipped meals to save money, highlighting the harsh, everyday realities many are facing. A fresh survey by APNORC echoes these concerns, revealing that roughly half of Americans currently see grocery costs as a significant stress factor. For many, everyday shopping is becoming a balancing act. People like 19-year-old Adam Bush, earning under $50,000 annually in Portland, confess they're opting for the bare essentials like TV dinners and Hot Pockets just to get by. The decline isn't limited to food and daily necessities. Retail chains such as Chipotle, Kroger, and Olive Garden are experiencing fewer customers, especially those from lower-income households. Household goods giant Procter & Gamble also reports slowing sales, with its CFO noting a consistent deceleration in American consumer expenditure, an early warning sign of potential trouble. Travel plans are no different. Americans are choosing to stay home more often. According to recent surveys, the average summer vacation expenditure has shrunk by about 25% compared to last year, with over half indicating they plan to cut back on travel for financial reasons. Families are making sacrifices. Some are hotel hopping less, skipping international trips, or staying closer to home. Even individuals like Kevin Irvin Kelly from Los Angeles are reducing outings, such as skipping international vacations and date nights, despite their steady incomes, worried about how tariffs and economic shifts might impact their household budgets. Meanwhile, many are adopting an austerity mindset. If it's not essential, it's not getting purchased. Expectant mom Kiara Kerniewski emphasizes that her spending is now sharply limited to necessities, reinforcing the belief that wages haven't kept pace with rising costs, creating what many view as a massive math problem within the economy. All these signs suggest a shift in the American financial landscape, where the question isn't just about spending less, it's about whether this slowdown is temporary or the start of a more profound economic adjustment. Do you believe this slowdown is a short-term blip, or are we on the brink of something much bigger? Drop your thoughts below. This debate is far from over. Recession reality check. How tariffs, inflation are forcing Americans to stop spending. Consumers have been living with economic anxiety for quite some time, and now that worry is translating into real changes in behavior. Natalie Slinger, a mother expecting her second child, is a prime example. Despite needing a larger home and another vehicle, these luxuries are currently beyond her means. Her family's expenses, including childcare costs that rival their mortgage payments, have left them with little room for extras. They've cut back on dining out and restrict vacations to camping trips. Second-hand items will likely be the norm for their newborn. The cost of everything is constantly on my mind, Slinger, 29 from St. Paul, shared. This scenario is becoming increasingly common. Consumer spending, which includes purchases of goods and services, barely increased by 0.3% in June, following a flat month in May. This stagnation is a stark contrast to the recent past, when even amid rising inflation, robust employment figures, government aid, and pent-up demand from the pandemic era kept spending levels high. When major economic shifts occur, consumer sentiment and spending typically align, noted Nancy Vanden Houten, a leading U.S. economist at Oxford Economics. The latest jobs report, released on Friday, indicated a slowdown in job creation, with only about 73,000 positions added in July, and approximately 100,000 over the previous 3 months. This growth rate is seen as insufficient given the expanding workforce. According to David Royal, the Chief Financial and Investment Officer at Thrivent, this report, which also saw significant downward adjustments to May and June's employment figures, led President Donald Trump to question its validity, even without concrete evidence, and to fire the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an independent agency relied upon by both public and private sectors for accurate data. Inflation is also on the rise, with the Personal Consumption Expenditures (PCE) index, the Federal Reserve's favored inflation metric, climbing to 2.6% in June compared to the same period last year. There are clear indications of economic vulnerability, commented Joanne Su, director of the University of Michigan's Surveys of Consumers, a highly influential gauge of consumer perceptions about the economy. Consumer sentiment showed a slight improvement in June and July, but remained predominantly negative. According to Su, consumers anticipate deteriorating labor market conditions and modest income increases. These factors are primarily driving the reduction in spending, she explained. Consumer sentiment reached its lowest point in June 2022, with individuals across all income brackets agreeing that the economic outlook was grim. At that time, inflation peaked at over 9%, its highest level in 40 years. However, the mood among higher-income consumers improved rapidly, and they continued to spend until April of last year. Sentiment plummeted again after the White House imposed tariffs on numerous countries and goods. While the initial tariff rates for most countries have been reduced, Trump recently introduced a new set of import taxes. This week, he also threatened to significantly increase tariffs on products from India. The impact of these tariffs has taken time to materialize in the data, partly because they were implemented later or at varying rates than initially planned, according to Oxford economics Vanden Houten. The forecasting firm predicts that the average tariff rate on U.S. imports will stabilize around 20%, up from 2% at the beginning of the year, and that the Consumer Price Index inflation measure will peak at 3.5% in the fourth quarter. Changes are unfolding gradually, Vanden Houten emphasized, but we shouldn't assume that everything will be fine. For now, Slinger and her husband are closely monitoring developments and adjusting their plans accordingly. They've purchased essential furniture before tariffs took effect and are keeping an eye on potential federal budget cuts that could affect their jobs at the University of Minnesota. Recently, he's been poring over travel guides as they dream about visiting Australia. "We're set on going there," Slinger said, "but we have no idea when we'll be able to make the trip." So, what do you think? Is the economic situation as dire as it seems? Or are there underlying factors we're missing? Share your thoughts in the comments.